All right, here we are again. We got a coaching interview today with it's a guy that's super special to my heart, Mr. Chuck Bauman. And here's a little bit about him that I know. First of all, he comes from a background where he was in the Army, and I think he was a helicopter pilot. He even did some work with the Special Forces as well. Got out, rose up in the corporate ladder, worked for, I think finished out as a VP for Essex, so major manufacturing companies, headed those up, still consults in that. Went on to be a life and air coach, a leadership boardroom coach, I get coaching coach. I mean, I've heard you touted as not just from you either, Chuck, but I've heard you say, and I've heard other people say, you're the best coach in the world. And you're my coach. I owe a lot to you, brother. And so I thought, what a great opportunity if we're looking to find out what are great attributes of a coach would be to talk with you, man. So would you mind just start us out? I touched on how you're got those multiple platforms that you're desired for, and
well, that's
best coach in the world.
That's a strong compliment.
But it's true. In fact, on those platforms, I think you're the only one that I know of that's, at least requested on all of them right there. So I think that there's something to what these people are talking about, hence the call. So would you take me through, I guess, the journey of becoming a coach and what it was that attracted you to it, and how this came to be?
I've always had a coach. I've always been mentored. I felt lucky in the military to always have people above me that were trying to develop me. In the corporate world, I had a lot of good people above me who always had me learning how. I grew up in athletics, so I'm very familiar with coaching in the athletic realm. And then actually, when I went to work as a Franklin Covey facilitator for the Covey Leadership Institute, it was the first time I was really exposed to truly what we would call coaching today. As an Air Force civilian at the time, I worked in the manpower quality office, and we call it facility. And so that was exposed to it, and the Covey stuff just realized how critical coaching, mentoring, whatever you
Hey, I don't know if everybody else can hear me, but I think as Chuck is freezing up a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's twice now recycled on me, Jonathan.
Okay, great. Well, we'll adjust that, down the road. But here's what I'd ask is, I think you're making a solid point about in the corporate world where you got to work with Stephen Covey and learn about being a coach. That's probably where, besides your whole life, where some of your coaching breakthroughs or styles were adapted. All right.
Yep.
So I would love to hear from you what you think, what you would call your coaching style. Because again, you've had quite an effect on my life. I think maybe you and I have a similar coaching style, but what would you say is, first of all, let me tell you, there's something out there in the world that's called getting chucked. And so I love you to elaborate on that, and then also hear what you think you're saying.
I believe that, excuse me, I believe the most accurate description of my coaching style is, in a succinct method, is speaking the truth in love. I do believe there's a balance of courage and consideration. A lot of people can tell you the truth.
Sure.
Excuse me, Jonathan, but they can't tell you the truth in a way that you can hear it.
Hmm.
And I feel like there's a skill in being able to tell someone they have an ugly baby and making them glad to hear it, appreciative of the feedback. And I think so many people either are so considerate that they never really get around to telling you the truth. And I think some people want to tell you the truth so bad that they're so
Mm.
inconsiderate about it that you just can't hear it. And I know you've experienced.
Oh yeah. Uh, Things that all of a sudden trigger people, or walls that a student keeps up for a long period of time, or the
Yeah,
fact that
and seen it.
sometimes all that initial share is really camouflage for something else, right? There's they're
Yeah.
putting up a smoke signal, and or they really maybe do think that that's their problem, but it often is a little bit deeper than that, right?
I will often say to someone before I have to give them painful feedback, you know, I love you, right? And you've
Yes.
seen that. People will start to laugh and giggle, and they'll be, oh, here it comes. And it's funny because I do that to remind myself that I love them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very uncomfortable to tell someone about their blind spot or to tell them something that you know they need to hear, but no one's going to
Sure.
say it. And so I have to remind myself, be strong, but be considerate. And it gives me a minute to think about, how am I going to tell this person the truth in a way
Loves
that
them.
won't won't hurt their feelings?
Right.
And or maybe it does hurt their feelings, but it at least minimizes the damage to the relationship. And I feel like that's the key that I've learned over the years, is to balance those two things, is to walk a pretty tight rope sometimes.
Well, I've seen you do it. I've had the pleasure of seeing you do it enough times, and and I've been in that hot seat myself on a occasion, and I just
Yep.
want to tell you I appreciate you in my life, and I know those people do too. Maybe not at the moment in the hot seat; they may be flaring up a little bit towards you, but I can tell you I haven't received your worst. I,
Yeah.
I've seen you up on a chair, screaming. You're a tall man. How tall are you, Chuck?
6'2".
6'2". So you standing on a chair is, like the Statue of Liberty, just screaming across the room at somebody. And they weren't getting the best words necessarily on that occasion. But I think that anybody that was in that room would agree that that's the thing that they needed to hear. That was the way to get through. And frankly, nobody else was up on a chair though.
Well, and I think you have to understand the personality instruments of the students that you're working with.
Oh yeah.
Um, if you have a student with an extreme personality trait of any kind, whether that's introversion or extroversion, you have to be where they are. You have to get, if they're obnoxious and loud, you're going to have to be obnoxious and loud, or they're not going to hear you. And so many coaches act like, they have one tool and they try to make it work for every fastener. If you got a hammer and you're looking at a screw, you need a different tool. And I feel like, when you truly, as a coach, love your students, love them, you try to find the softest tool you can use at the time to achieve the results you want. You don't want to stand on the chair and yell at people.
No,
But if that's the softest tool that's going to work, then you just got to get up on the chair.
so would you say that that's getting chucked?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think sometimes the quiet truth spoken in a mild manner is much more difficult to hear for some people. You know what I mean? For someone like the student that we were talking about, people yelling and screaming at her, that's her life.
Right.
She's used to that. So it wasn't hard for her to hear that.
Yeah.
It was hard for the rest of you to hear it, but it wasn't hard for her. But for an introvert who is so sensitive to everything, you know, even a kind word spoken softly can really cut. And so you just have to know who you're dealing with, I think, mainly.
So if I were to find what I was asking about the getting chucked, it's that, but it's more. I think I use the analogy getting your onion peeled. A lot of times on the surface, you think you want something or need something or are wired a certain way or that there's something special about you that underlying it's a whole different meaning. It's a whole different thing that you're looking for. Um, there's a lot of people in the world, they know of a story about a boat, for instance, that a guy wanted a boat and the boat was really a driving force for that. He really wanted to help people to go out and have fun, but
Right.
but through a process you would get to that question. And so it was kind of asking why, and then at a deeper level why, and at a deeper level why, and at a deeper level why. So that's what I would say is getting chucked is really getting down to is the digging in and getting down, having some intuition that you're not there yet, and digging
You
in.
know, I think that goes back to loving people as well, Jonathan. The a good coach, in my opinion, loves the people he works with enough that I really want to understand at a deeper level. And I think sometimes trying to understand why somebody wants something at a deeper level forces them to understand why they want it at a deeper level. And and that is a powerful moment. As you know, you've seen it transition many, many times. When people realize what they really want, why they really want it, sometimes it's not as difficult to have what you want as you thought it was.
Mm-hmm. So if I know you very good, so in digging in, right? I get the pleasure to work with you daily. I get to coach right next to you. You've been my coach for years, so I'd be remiss to not talk about a style that I think that I see that you have, and I'd have to ask. I don't know whether I adopted it from you or just strengthened it because of you, but that is, I think you're a journeyman kind of as a coach in that you take journeys with people, and I've had the pleasure of being on a number of them. Now you've invited me on more than I went on. Like the triathlon. I think that a lot of times you get an idea about some way that you need to better yourself, and then you take people that you know that need it too right along with you, and maybe you just stay a chapter ahead of them. Would you say that's the case?
Yeah, I think that's a fair analogy.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have seen you and other coaches who realize a student needs someone to be beside them or they're not going to get through something. And go along for the ride, if you will.
Yeah.
Just to be sure that they're going to have somebody there with them. And I enjoy those moments. Honestly, where I am in my life, I don't really have a bucket list of things anymore, but I love seeing other people complete bucket list type items. So, um, and I don't like asking someone to do something that I can't do myself or that I wouldn't do myself. Um, I feel like to stay in integrity, sometimes you have to do some things that you can't ask someone else to do something that you wouldn't try to do yourself. So I feel like that's an integrity issue sometimes.
You were the first guy to ever tell me the Gandhi story. I think this is a really good place for it because I think it probably helped mold that philosophy you're talking about.
Yeah. So my favorite Gandhi story is a lady trekked across India, which at the time, in the 50s and 60s was not a pleasant trip. Stood in line with her son, who was diabetic, so that Gandhi would convince the young man to not eat sugar. And when she got to the front of the line, she introduced herself, and Gandhi said, "Could you come back in 3 weeks?" And she said, "Sure." So she went away after all that, went back home, waited 3 weeks, came back all the way across India, waited in line again. And when Gandhi saw the kid, he said, "Son, do you know who I am?" And of course, the kid knew who he was. And he said, "If I asked you to do me a personal favor, would you?" He said, "I would do anything for you." He said, "I want you to quit eating sugar." And the kid said, I'll do it." And he said, "Thank you." And the mother was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait a minute." Like, why did I have to make this trip twice if all you were going to do is ask him to quit eating sugar? And Gandhi said, "Well, you don't understand. When you came the first time, I myself was eating sugar." And to me, that's the essence of being a good coach, is that we don't always impose our beliefs. I should say we should never impose our beliefs or any of that on the other people. But I think to be in integrity, really, we shouldn't ask them to do things that we can't do ourselves or that we can't attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not you quit eating sugar to help somebody else quit eating sugar, you should at least try to quit eating sugar so you at least understand the struggle, right?
That's
And I've seen you grow as a coach through that very process where a student says, "I need to do this," and it's really a struggle. And I see it in your face. I realize in that moment that you have the same struggle, and you're like, "You know what? I'll do that with you."
yeah.
And those are the moments, I think, as a coach, that being in integrity around those kinds of things, whether or not you're successful or not, is really not even the point. The point is that you now understand the student's struggle.
So, so I once heard that an expert is somebody who failed at doing it every other way. So when you think about the story like Thomas Edison of failing 10,000 times before he got the light bulb right, um, you've probably had your share of fails along the way. Interesting enough, and you may have helped me with this philosophy too, is I now embrace them, man. Like they're gifts so that I get to help somebody else. I always know that frankly, if I didn't struggle with some of these things and again, be maybe a chapter ahead of somebody, then I wouldn't be able to help them. Right. I couldn't be in their shoes. And I think that becoming a coach means, I think, you get a lot more of those opportunities, right? You get a
Yes.
lot more gifts from the Lord, right? Hence what's going on with you maybe right now physically, huh?
Yeah, I feel like my basic view of the way the world works um, is that we're given challenges. Life's not supposed to be easy. I know there's a lot of people out there that wish that was true, and they wish their life was easy. And I think those people misunderstand the purpose of life, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe life's supposed to be easy. I don't want my life to be easy. I wouldn't wish for you that your life be easy. Um, I would wish for you that you embrace the difficulties that come for what they are, and that is lessons from a loving father who want you to grow and learn. And I like you, I have this jaw thing going right now. It's relatively painful and relatively frustrating and relatively humiliating in a lot of ways. And people would like me to be upset about that, I believe. Like in their own minds, they say, well, if I had that, I would feel such and such or this way or something. And I view this as an opportunity to learn something that I may need to help someone else down the road. And I love that. I love that the way it seems to work is this gives me a chance to be a better example. Let's put it that way. People have difficult things in their lives, and they react with anger, and they react with some of them change their religious beliefs. Some of them are weakened in their faith because they have difficulties. And I view difficulties in my life as an opportunity to show the right way to do things, the right way to think about things, and the right way to handle yourself. And so I look forward to them. I embrace them. I love reframing them as an opportunity, you know?
So I'm going to ask you to use a little different word there. And every once in a while, you've coached me enough that I maybe get a chance to help you back potentially with a blind spot. So I'm going to bring you back just for a second to you standing in front of the room. And you had a struggle with cancer, right?
Yep.
You fought it, you battled it, and then you beat it, right?
Yep.
What'd you say in front of the room? What was the words you called the cancer to you at that moment?
A blessing.
And I think a gift, maybe even, might
Yep.
have been words. So if you wouldn't mind, we'll do it together, but you mind reframing your jaw and from opportunity?
Yeah, it is a blessing, I think. You know, and when I describe it, I think as a blessing, people don't understand what I mean by a blessing, but I really do feel like this is in my best interest. It's for me, it's for my own growth, and it undoubtedly has pushed me forward in so many ways. You know, we don't grow in life when things are good. You know, when life is good and easy and things are just flowing to you, that's not when your personal growth takes place. It's when things are difficult that you learn the most, that you grow the most, and that you rely on your spiritual beliefs the most. And so I look at this as that opportunity to do all those things. This is my growth. This is my quest. This is my opportunity to grow.
Well, I would tell you that from this view, that as far as you leading by example, for as you saying that this gives you a opportunity to show how to handle something like that, I would just say that that's the case. What I get to see you very often. You never bellyache about it. You may have something dripping out of your face. You don't acknowledge it, man. You fight that thing in a super respectable way. I mean, you've kept your blood cells from changing inside you with that mental game. And I just respect it. And frankly, if anybody that I know ever has to face something like that, to include me, I want to be able to face it like that, man. It's super stand up and respectable.
Well, you know, I believe words mean things. I believe that in our minds, we have to have a word to even think about something. And, you know, and so when we speak things out loud, we hear ourselves talk. We hear what we say to ourselves, and we hear what we say to others. And I think it's bad enough to have a negative thought and give it any power, but I really believe it's worse to speak it. And
Mm.
so I try not to speak it. It's not that my life is perfect, it's that I just don't want to add any power to that negative thought. I believe that words and our thoughts mean something. And so I try to guard against that slippery slope of I hear it. I go to Starbucks. I can go to any restaurant. I can go anywhere where I can overhear conversations, and I hear people say, "Here's my struggle, Jonathan."
Hmm.
Well, if you believe you have a struggle, you know what you have? You have a struggle.
You're right,
That's
either which way, right?
that's exactly what you said.
Mhm.
Here's my struggle. Here's what I'm having problems with. Here's here's where I see that falling short. And they're talking about themselves
Mm.
in a way that they can't win.
Mm.
They're just making things, they're making their life, their own self miserable.
Yeah, they're not putting it behind them, coming to a realization about it, and then putting it behind them, right? They're empowering it. So a wise man once that I know once told me, he says, you can't help from a bird landing on your head, but you can keep it from nesting there. And
Yeah.
and for me, that was pretty solid because it is about the reset when you do have some thoughts that the world will throw some negative at you. It's not you can't go through a day, right?
Yeah, I don't live in a world where everything is perfect. And I don't have like some Pollyanna view of the world that it's all pixie dust and unicorn horns and rainbows and unicorns. I don't have that world either. So there are days that are not as good as others.
Mm-hmm.
But when you say to me, "How are you, Chuck?" I am not going to say anything negative. You can't make me,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a good day.
Yeah.
I'm still breathing. I'm warm. I got clothes on. It's not wet in here. I'm fed. I might not be fed enough, but I'm fed. And I find it just remarkable to watch people disintegrate a good life into misery by the words and the choices of thoughts they use.
Mm. Well, that's
I
a
think that's what we do as coaches.
yeah.
We are simply the offset to all that negative thinking and all that negative talk. And you know this, the more diligent you become about watching other people do that, the more you guard your own.
Right. So I've heard it described as a positive and negative stream. So you just alluded, but we're lifeguards. We're helping yank people back out of that negative stream and get them back on the process that's a positive outcome to their future. Right.
Jonathan, it's funny. Even the term positive and negative, when I watch how they label things,
Mm-hmm.
people will say, "Oh, it's going to storm tonight." And they'll say, "Oh, I hope it doesn't storm too much. You know what? It could be bad. Um, limbs could get knocked down. Oh, it's terrible. You lost a tree in your yard." Well, is it? I
Mm.
The labels that we put on things make us feel bad about the fact that we lost a tree, and people will tell us, if you want, you can milk that for weeks, right? Like, oh, I got a tree down, and oh, I got to cut up the tree. Oh, it's such a shame to lose such a beautiful tree.
That's where
And it
that
just
tree
make
used to be. That beautiful
oh
tree used to live right
oh
there.
I miss that shade so much now. And it just becomes this thing. And it's not just trees, it's everything.
Sure. Flat
And you
tire.
know what? The tree was gonna die. It got hit by lightning, whatever. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just a tree.
Mm.
And that's the cycle of life for a tree. it shouldn't be bad or good. You can plant a new tree. You can, I mean, there's going to be another experience come along, and they do it with everything. They're like, oh, isn't it terrible that dot dot dot? And I always think to myself, who told you that was terrible?
Now, you don't see a tree go into a state of depression over losing a family member, right?
Right. I could go out here and look at all the other trees. They're not mad that one fell down. You know what I mean? They're not like all weeping and bent over and gnashing their teeth together because one of their brothers fell. They just don't do that. We do that. We ruminate on the worst things sometimes instead of just, life is not easy. It's not supposed to be.
So, Chuck, how would you say, this is a question, but how would you say we've been discussing it and probably people are picking up on it, but how would you define that you're different than other coaches? I mean, listen, I told you, I think, and I know a number of people think you're the best coach out there. I've heard it discussed besides you saying it from a stage, okay? But you said it, so now I'm calling you out on that. Why are you the best coach, man? What makes you different?
I truly love the people I help. I think that I listen first to understand and not to show people how smart I am. My goal as a coach is not to be right. It's not even to influence people to do what I think they should do. My role as a coach is to influence them to do what they think they should do. But first, I have to understand what that is. I really have to understand. And I think so many coaches out there today are really trying to teach you or influence you or move you to their position. They're not coaching, they're mentoring, or they're trainers or whatever. They're not really coaching. To me, life coaching is about understanding what someone wants and helping them achieve that. And in order to do that, you have to listen. And you've seen the movie Inception.
Yes.
Where in their dreams, you plant a thought.
Right.
And the only way it works is if they think it was theirs.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think coaching is the same way.
Mm-hmm.
If I tell you what to do, number one, I don't think that's coaching.
No.
But I know it's not effective because I know that you're not going to do what I tell you to do most of the time. So the most effective way to get you to do what you should be doing is to somehow lead you into that rabbit hole on your own so that you believe it was your thought. Mm. And, as a coach, as a young coach, or as a young man, I should say, you often want to be right. You want to get that accolade. You want people to give you credit for, quote, changing their lives. But I think all that is a trap. What you have to care about is making the change, helping them get that change they want. And if they think you didn't do anything, that's perfect, right? Mm-hmm. Jonathan, yeah. You've seen this yourself where you've told someone 10 different ways. You've tried to lead them to the fact that they need to paint the car blue.
Right.
Right? And you've said, man, blue would be a cool color. Or what do you think about this? And you've said it every way you know how to think of it. And right. They just don't hear it. And then someone else says in a meeting, why don't you just paint it blue? And they go, wow, that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's almost as if the first time they've ever heard it. And I've seen that, be the case. And I can tell you that in my younger years as a coach, I used to be sore about that. I used to say, man, like I'd turn to Eric.
Yeah, like I said that 10 times.
Yeah, they didn't hear me say that the last 7 times. We just were talking about that on the last call. It's in my notes. But but what I learned about the psychology, sometimes, psychology of marketing is that they need to hear a name a certain number of times. They need to hear something a certain number of times. So maybe their subconscious was hearing me, but it wasn't quite registering, and it made it to the frontal, it made it to their thought process now when somebody else said it. So instead, I've grown as a coach in that I embrace that, and I use other folks to deliver my message. So I try to get the count up fast and early on them, so that they hear it 7 times, so that they can make the change.
So you asked me a question earlier about like becoming a coach and having failures, and here's what I think has helped me to become a really effective coach. And that is, I know that I have a God-given talent to see the issue and to understand the resolution of how to get over it. But I also know what you and I just said. I can't just tell you. It won't work. I've tried it too many times. So if I try to lead you to that answer and you don't get there, it frustrates me personally. And I feel like my ability as a coach directly impacts your ability to get what you want. And so when that happens, when I can't make my point, when I don't know how to communicate, when I don't have a good story, or when I don't know enough to make that work, it fires me up and fuels me to go learn as much as I can to try to make sure that never happens again. Because it's the most frustrating thing as a coach to see what someone needs to do to make their life better and not be able to help them see it. And I know you've experienced it.
Oh, I would agree with you. And I could tell you there's pictures of folks coming to mind that, I worked so hard to try to understand them, to try to figure out how to motivate them, how to move them. I read books. I learned new tricks, and they were the ones that grew me, though. So they were gifts. They were true gifts. But I remember those challenges. And speaking of challenges, that's one of my questions, man. Is let's talk over the next decade. I know that's a big stretch to even quantify, to even think about. But we think the biggest challenge that in this industry, or just even a broader cast, even we're going to have in the next decade. Well, what's going to be the biggest challenge we have?
Jonathan, I see a lot of people who claim to be coaches. They're not coaches in the way that I mean coaching, or in the way that you mean coaching, but there's no way to prevent them from saying that they're coaches. But they're marketers. They're not coaches. So they're good at getting coaching students. And to some extent, I think they're good at providing content, which is not the coach's job either. So they can maintain a student for about 6 months, maybe less. And then the content runs out. And then the student feels like there's no value there. And so these coaches in our industry, the typical coaching engagement is 6 months. My typical coaching engagement, your typical coaching engagement, we measure in years. And gosh, if I was to characterize why people have left, it's not usually because they don't want to stay. There are people that leave occasionally, but it's rare.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I feel like the biggest problem with the industry is that most people who say they're coaches are not coaching. They're doing something else. They're just using that term. And mastermind's the same way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I had a conversation with a gentleman yesterday, talked about what a great mastermind he just led.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in my mind, a mastermind is a group of people that get together regularly over years and years and years
Mm-hmm.
to help each other. In the book Think and Grow Rich,
Mm-hmm.
that's the definition of mastermind that I use, is the one that he uses, Napoleon Hill's definition.
Yeah, he had 9 in his cabinet, and then he expanded it. He didn't take away from it. He just added, and I think he grew it to 50 at the time of the book publishing. But he started with 9, and those 9
right. Stayed together forever.
Right.
So you see today you have a guy who says he's a coach, and he says he's coaching 4,000 people. Or you see a guy who says, "Oh, I'm a mastermind," but we get together once a year, and every time he gets together, it's different people. Well, that's not a mastermind, and you're not coaching 4,000 people. That's not how that works.
Yeah, I could see how a mastermind does get formed in the middle of the room, the concept, but I see your point in really getting traction and real growth and real, movement.
Well, you don't learn enough about someone to help them in 3 days. Right. That's not how that works. I mean, you can help. I'm not saying you can't help, but it's not the same when you know someone for 5 years in the way that we do inside of our masterminds. You know the backstory, you know the struggles, you know the growth, you know the relationships, the finance, you know everything. So you have a level of understanding of that other person that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, in my experience. I know more about you and Erica and everything about your life than I would any other way, except sitting in a room with you and hearing you pour your heart out with other people in a real mastermind, right?
Yeah, and seeing my struggles over the years, as well as Erica's, and us getting to live that alongside you, right?
And listen, I'm going to say this, but people will laugh. People will think I'm being mean, and I still like you, right?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? You see people for who they really are, and you choose not to judge them for that. You choose to accept that this is just where they are and who they are, and that is rare outside of that experience inside of the mastermind.
I want to talk about a time that I got chucked, and I can tell you, I don't know how you knew exactly how to work me, except for that we're wired pretty similar, and that is, I'd run very hard, and I had a real accomplished few years, and I thought that I'd hit my goal or my stride or the plateau that I'd been running for, and that it was a good time for me to kick heels up maybe and sit back on my accomplishments. And somehow you knew to, in front of others, kind of call me out. And after I'd run so hard, tell me, well, what'd you tell me, Chuck?
Well, I just accused you of doing the easy stuff, the stuff that would make you look good in front of the group, and that you hadn't really tackled the hard stuff, the stuff that you didn't want to really look at. And then you, of course, like most students, wanted me to tell you what that was.
I think the words you used is I'm a slacker right after I'd, run the marathon, cross the finish line. I'm thinking it's time for my medal. And and Chuck says, stop being such a slacker. That's all, your background, you're in the Marines. That's all easy stuff for you. doing business, that's easy. What's the hard stuff? Well, when are you going to really start, doing something? Stop being a slacker. You did it to me and another guy, Dave Garcia, in the room. And,
Yep.
and boy, that was a good way to work me, man, because you sent me on a journey inside myself to figure out, man, what is this dude talking about? Like, and
And what do
frankly,
you know now that you didn't know then, though?
well, frankly, that when you arrive is only when the journey gets to start. You finally got, when you think you arrived or get what you want, that's just when you got enough headspace to devote to where the real work needs to happen. And that's in who you are, who your character is, what your purpose is, and what you're here for, and what you should be doing every day. And frankly, that's not always an easy thing. You figure out some challenges that you maybe didn't even realize you had along those journeys. But we know that sometimes bringing them to light makes them be able to be put behind you. You get to rebuke them and get them behind you and get over them. So
Those things that you've learned since then,
mm-hmm.
those little things that you were going to coast on and be proud of, pale in consideration to the growth you've had since then.
I heard it put this way, and I can think that, so most people's journey, and this is what I see, is they're after all these material things, these things that cost money, right? And it's got a dollar value on it, a trip and this and that, and the jet ski, the car, the house, the RV, the bank account. But frankly, the real things in life, the true things in life, are things that don't cost money and that came to us a lot of times for free. And that's why we take them for granted, like our health or our patriotism or our motivation or our relationships. And then we don't value them, how we can think, how we can use our thoughts. We don't value how valuable our mind is and all the circuitry that's going up there, or the fact that I got a buddy who throws like this now from a spinal injury. Until we lose things that we got for free, we don't understand the value of them. He would trade his millions of dollars in a bank account over the injury. He would trade it all day to, be able to do a good, clean push-up again.
Yep.
So yep. I think when we get those things that were, on our vision board, those material things, when we get to arrive at those things, and we have to do it, is, something maybe been ingrained in us since we were 16 to have that car. And now we're going to get it. But when we get them, it's really about the journey to get it. The experience is not about having it. It's not about putting it in the garage. It's about the journey. That's the thing that didn't cost.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's good. It's good.
Well, okay. So one other thing I wanted to dig in was you are a coach on these multiple platforms. So you're a life and air coach with me. You're I Get Coaching coach with me. You also coach in Leadership Boardroom. These are all high-end coaching programs, right? And I just wonder, you've got different groups. In fact, you've even got different groups inside those platforms. And so I would ask, how is the culture different between your groups?
The culture between the groups. It's interesting. In many ways, they're the same. And in a lot of ways, they aren't. Each group does tend to have its own language develop over time. And it goes back, I think, to the words that we choose to use. So an example of that in my mind is you could have a group with very, very, very strong Christian ethics and values, and people that grew up very educated in the Bible, and they will use terms. They will say the Holy Spirit, they will say God, they will say my Creator, but they will talk about things in the same way that another group says the universe or my intuition, and so it's in some ways it's all the same.
Mm-hmm.
The underlying principles that we discuss, I think, are universal. They're timeless. They're changeless, and they exist whether you believe in them or not. And but I think the language of each group is a little different, and it because words mean something in your brain, in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
it nuances the conversation. And I find as a coach, you have to be able to. I mean, this goes back to what we've already talked about, but you have to use the language of the student back to them so that they understand what you're talking about, right?
Right.
You can't. It's a simple example, but if someone says, I feel like it's hot, you can't say, well, I see why it's hot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, seeing why it's hot and feeling that it's hot are two different things. They weren't talking about seeing it, they were talking about feeling it. So as a coach, you better understand that we're not talking about logic, we're not talking about visualizing, we're talking about feeling it. And so those kind of nuances exist in the group, and to some extent it grows out of the epiphany moments, the breakthrough moments that happen in a room. If I've had a group read the Code of the Extraordinary Mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of a sudden, everyone in the group is reading the same book, and now they're all using that language to describe the growth that's going on.
They're using the vocabulary that's inside the book. They're talking to each other.
Right. They have a language.
Would you consider this? And
right.
Yeah, I've seen that. Mm-hmm.
And then people will tell a story, and all of a sudden those words become the expression all in perfect timing in one of my groups means it's okay that you're late, or it's okay that you had a flat tire, or it's okay because it's all in perfect timing. Meanwhile, a group over here, they're studying Joe Dispenza or some other work. And so their language is different. It's, they've developed their own language to describe the same things, the exact same things. Like right now, you guys, I know you are working on Think and Grow Rich,
Mm-hmm.
and not just reading it once, but reading it multiple times to internalize it. And
absolutely, yeah.
And that book has its own language as well. Mm-hmm. But I would submit to you that Think and Grow Rich is no different than the Code of the Extraordinary Mind, and no different than Joe Dispenza's work. These are all the same. They're all the same principles. They're simply stated in different languages and different semantics.
Yeah, these secrets don't seem to be so secret, but they seem to pass up the majority of people, man. Still yet.
Yeah.
So, but I agree that most of those authors that you just described would accredit Think and Grow Rich to a lot of their backstory. So that was a good starting place for us. And we're excited about the growth that happened in the first read, and we're going through it again. So here's a good one. Here's a good one I want to dig in on. What has been, you've been coaching for a while now, so I want you to think back. What has been your biggest challenge in a student?
I use this analogy from time to time. The biggest challenge is when you get someone who says they want to turn left. They're riding in the left-hand turn lane. They got their left turn blinker on. They got their arm out the left window indicating they're going to go left. And they say they're going to turn left any second now. And they never turn the wheel. And, you know, we talked earlier, you know, when you know what they need to do and you can't get them to see it, it's one thing. You feel like frustration as a coach that you need to work on your skill set. And you may read a book, like to your point, or learn, take a class, or talk to other coaches. But when there's nothing missing except action, when there's nothing missing, when as a coach you see they have everything they need to make the left-hand turn and they just won't turn the wheel, that's the most troubling student there is.
And that's in the
because you can't turn the wheel for them.
Right. You can't push on the gas. You can't turn the wheel for them. And I can say that that's been probably at the top of my list, of struggles or challenges as a coach as well. Is you get the plan, you make it, and then
you break it into pieces.
Right, and then they don't ever hit the gas. They don't ever go. And then you see, though, what the real challenge and the real frustration for me is I see something so big in them. Those people, they got something so large in them. And whatever reason, they got that foot on the brake. Sometimes, I don't know whether they're not even spinning their wheels a lot of times. Some of them maybe are. But, yeah.
You know, it's so I used to struggle as a coach. When I first started coaching, I believed the way it would work is I would pick someone up at 0 and I would get to work with them to 10, right? And, you know, that's not how it works sometimes. I had a guy tell me once, at a coaching retreat, that sometimes your job is to pick them up at 5.11 and help them to 5.12, and that's all you were supposed to do. And so today I try to look at those students and say, well, I got them in the left lane. They got their blinker on. They know they want to turn left. They know why they want to turn left. We have a plan for what happens after they turn left. We're ready to turn left. Maybe it's not my job to be with them when they do actually turn. Mm. And I don't know, you can't help everyone. Mm-hmm. And I think when you get into coaching, you have a heart to want to help everyone, but you can't want it for them. Oh, yeah. You know, that's the part that's really hard.
There's millions and millions of people out there that need us, that can use our service, that can use our help, use our insight. And there is absolutely no way that you can reach them all. So no. How do you go about, what's an ideal student for you then?
Oh, an ideal student is someone, man, when you say that, I have pictures of people come in my head. You know, they come to coaching calls prepared because they view my time as precious. And so they don't want to waste my time and they don't want to waste their time. Mm-hmm. So they don't come to the coaching call and try to figure out what we need to talk about on the call.
They've done some homework. Yeah,
they've done the work. And they come with a list of challenges, a list of things that they think might work. And some of them even come with the reframe already. Like, I think I just need to reframe this like this. What do you think? And, I think of students who I lay out what I believe to be 3 or 4 months worth of things to work on. And a month later, they've done them all.
Mhm.
They just executed everything. When you tell them, what do you think? They think, well, they say, well, I think I need to turn left. I need to turn my blinker on. I need to get in the left lane. I need to turn left. And you say, man, that sounds great. Let's try that and let me know how it is. And then 3 days later, they send you a text, turned left.
Yeah.
It all worked. And you're like, wow. And, it's funny. Those students never leave the program. Those are the ones that make progress. Those are
They're
the
making
ones whose
progress.
lives are,
Different than when they started significantly, for sure. Absolutely.
yeah, they're making the best progress. They look like success to the outside world. They're they're shining examples. They're just so easy to work with. Like, you don't even have to make. I don't know how to describe it. You say, "Do you see this?" You hold the mirror up, and they say, "Oh my gosh, I do see it." And then it's gone the next time they come back, fixed. The students like that uh, are the people that become coaches.
So interesting enough, if I heard you right, I think you said your biggest challenge as student is ones that don't take action, and the best students are ones that take action. I think
Yeah,
that's what you said. So there's
it
some
is what I
key,
said.
there may be some key here or hint uh, for the audience.
Well, and here's the other thing. I think some people get into coaching
Mm-hmm.
believing that the coach is somehow going to do something that helps them be successful. And I think what I realize, I have coaches, but I realize that the coach's job is not to do anything except help me know what I should be doing and to maybe prioritize the limited resources I have to maximize getting what I want. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Which leads me to, who is your coach right now? Who currently is coaching you?
Well, it's funny you asked me that. Um, I have a coaching relationship with Jack Lanham,
Mm-hmm.
that and in certain areas of my life, I would say uh, that's the most extreme coach that I have in certain areas of my life. I get coaching from Sean McCloskey,
Mm-hmm.
uh, again, in certain areas of my life. But Sean and I both use Jack. So Jack coaches us both. So in the areas that Jack coaches me, Sean and I don't help each other. But Sean helps me with certain things, and Steve Cook still helps me with a lot of things too. And you know, if I was going to hire a coach, the first question I would ask him is the question you just asked me, because I want to understand. I know as a coach, well, I know as a student, let's say of Jack, how much influence Jack has over me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say the three men that influenced me the most today is Jack Lanham, Sean McCloskey, and Steve Cook.
Sounds
And
like
not necessarily in that order.
sounds like you're building your own invisible council.
Well, you do, right? That's what you do. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I would want to know, who are those influences for my coach?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Uh, and I would be proud to let any potential student interview those three. And if they don't agree with me that that those three are qualified to coach, then you probably don't want me as your coach, because you're going to hear what I hear from those three, right?
Yeah, you're molded of them.
We as coaches, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and I can't even take credit for anything that I know or say or think. I can tell you who the men are that I let influence me, and I can tell you the books I've read, and I can tell you which ones I like the most. And if that's what you want to be influenced by, I'm happy to share that with you. But I would not hire some knucklehead who doesn't have a coach. That's someone who just wants to make money off of being a coach, but doesn't believe in the coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a good coach.
Yeah, I agree. So, one other thing that I would say, all those guys that you described that I know something strong about them, maybe even stood in a circle with almost all of them. I've stood in circles with all of them, but those circles were prayer circles. And interesting enough that how isn't it pretty often that you invite the Lord into helping your coaching and your delivery of your message when you get the chance?
So I will say this. I don't believe that I am personally responsible for results. I believe that my job, my calling, my quest, my whatever you want to call it, is to do the best I can with what I have in that moment. And I know that I have stood in front of a room and said things, and that people have heard something completely different than what I said. But that's what they needed to hear. And so I believe that my job, and you know this, is to be a pure vessel.
That's right.
The universe doesn't work against me. It doesn't work for me. I'm not lucky. It works through me. Mm-hmm. And to the extent that I can facilitate that happening by prayer or meditation or learning or understanding or whatever I have to do, I'm going to do that so that when it's time to do that job, I can be as clean and clear a vessel as possible.
Yeah, so
Clearly that.
If I dig in there, you mean by pure vessel, you mean free of?
I mean, free of impurities.
Mm-hmm.
Like not being in integrity with yourself.
Like ego, maybe.
Well,
I would say,
ego or yeah, I mean, I don't know enough to help someone, but I know enough to help them get out of their own way so they can help themselves. And, the more you know, the more you know you don't know. The ignorant people of the world are cocksure, positive that they're smart. The men that I like to hang out with and the women that I like to hang out with and the people that I admire the most are the most wise, the most understanding people in the world, but they're not positive about their knowledge in a way that makes them arrogant, right? They're happy to share what they believe. They know why they know what they know. But they're not out to make you believe what they believe if you choose not to.
That's solid. Well, listen, just to segue on, we don't know what we don't know out there, and as a wrap up, what don't we know about Chuck? Like, what haven't we discussed that we need to know here? What?
I don't even know, man. I'm pretty much an open book. I don't talk about my personal life a lot. I don't talk about my past a lot. I share enough so that people know I have some experience in those kind of things. I don't know, Jonathan. I don't know what that would be. I think, wow, that's a good question. I don't know that there's a lot that isn't generally known about me. It's a good question. I'll have to think about that. You know, I used to play poker pretty seriously.
Oh yeah, that's probably don't mess with Chuck's poker face. I can tell you that we might say we made it to the final table even against magicians. Very
And card sharks.
card sharks. And I'll just tell you that I didn't come out on the top of that transaction with Chuck. But it was fun. We had a great time, and we've had a lot of them. We've had a lot of great journeys, and this was just another one. So I appreciate you being on it with me. I look forward to, what this does to help people in choosing, how to pick a coach and what attributes that they're looking for. I wanted to be a better coach, and that's why I wanted to dig in and find out, what do people have in them that makes them the best coach. I'm going to keep getting better, and I know you are too, man, and I'm enjoying being by your side doing it. So
I love you too, brother.
Yeah. So thank you. I love you. And you guys have a great rest of your day, everybody who tuned in, and I've enjoyed it.
All right. See you, bud.
Plenty more to continue. Bye-bye now.